Josh Brolin is an exceptional man.
Oh, he's great. He's George Washington. And what I did is I told him George Washington is unknowable and opaque, and yet he's able to motivate men in the dead of night when they're losing. And you somehow have to be somebody that is both unknowable, like only as a historian, one of the historians in the film says, maybe Martha gets in there, his wife, maybe Lafayette, maybe Hamilton, but very, very few people get into that inner space of him. And yet his rectitude, he's taller than most of the folks, but he has a bearing that is so powerful that men that are leaving, men that are deserting, men that are mutinying stop when he starts and talks, and they sign up and say, okay, we'll fight for another 6 weeks, or you're right, I'm going to put down my arms, this is crazy. And there are moments when the entire fate, even after the revolution, the entire fate of the United States of America is dependent on the army, angry that they haven't been paid by Congress, not marching on Philadelphia and turning this into a military dictatorship. And it's George Washington who stops. And then what does he do when everything's got together? He resigns his military commission, and then he is asked to be the president of the Constitutional Convention. He lends his stuff. He is voted unanimously president.
Wow.
And what does he do after 2 terms? He leaves it.
He's kind of the coach of the Bad News Bears, kind of in a way.
George III, who's not the idiot that we try to make him out to be.
George W. Bush?
No, George the Third.
I was going to say
the King George the Third.
I think
he says when he hears that
he
Washington
even voted, he was an idiot. I think he might have.
When Washington resigned his military commission and then resigned a presidency, he said then he is the most powerful character of the age. So this, imagine what that means today. That we're in an age where everybody wants me, and that he is no you. He understood that the actual highest office is citizen. And he was determined to go back to that and to not claim for himself wealth, didn't make money during the war, didn't try to amass personal power. He just said, it is my service to this new idea. As Payne was saying, not since the time of Noah do we have a chance to reset and go back to zero and create something new, as he called it, an asylum for mankind. That's the second episode of our film. Every one of our episodes is named after a phrase from Thomas Paine. The first is, in order to be free, that the feeble engines of despotism only work, he said, unless you can will it. In order to be free, you just need to will it. And then asylum for mankind. And then when things are dark, the times that try men's soul. And then a great title called Conquer by the Drawn Game. It's what Washington understood. Britain, they have to win, and they can't do it. They can't sustain armies 3,000 ways from home in an area that they misunderstand how big we are. And of course, nobody's got a weather report. So that storm,
right? He realized the battle's not. It's not right here in this moment. It is, but if you look at the different legs of it, there's more than a couple of ways to win this thing.
The historian Jane Kaminsky says he knows what every insurrectionary leader means, meaning guerrilla. That you eat at them there.
Right.
Like more British and Hessian, they're mercenaries, soldiers die in New Jersey from being picked off in guerrilla moments foraging than they are in 3 big set battles of Trenton, Princeton, and Monmouth Courthouse. So it is a down and dirty war. And there are terrorist organizations of loyalists.
It's like Grand Theft America.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty wild, and yet
crazy.
Out of it comes an extraordinary order, and yet out of it comes the echo of Lincoln, who understood the founding better than anyone else, and delivers the Declaration of Independence 2.0 at Gettysburg, in which he said, "We really do mean all men are created equal."
Oh yeah,
right.
Lincoln was that White Iverson.
We're gonna live through all time or die by suicide. Like nobody's coming to attack us and conquer us. If we dissolve, it's on us. And so that's the message for today.
It is.
It's what Washington's example of giving up power. It's of the non-authoritarian stuff of Thomas Paine and Jefferson, and this sense of the power of the power of the civic example, and then of course, Lincoln's warning that you have to stay together. And he presided over the closest we ever came to national suicide or civil war. And without him, like without Washington, who knows what happens. But at the end of the first episode, Lexington conquered happens in 1775. By 1776, the land we're sitting on, by the way, is farmland. Mm-hmm. The biggest battle of the Revolution will take place on the Battle of Long Island, which we lose because of George Washington, who's the most important person in the history of the United States. Without him, we don't have a country because of his mistakes. So nobody's perfect. Everybody's pretty complicated. And
wait, we don't have a country because of his mistakes?
No. If he didn't live, if he didn't survive or if he was surrendered, we wouldn't have a country. He's central to it. And at the same time, he's flawed, he's rash, he rides out on the battlefield at Kips Bay, just over there, and his aides grab the reins of the horse because he's going to get killed. If he gets killed, it's all over. He rides out in Princeton and the next January in this middle of the battle, and some aide covers his eyes. He's going to get killed. But he makes a classic mistake at the Battle of Long Island, in Brooklyn, what is now Brooklyn, and he doesn't protect his left flank, and the British curl him up. Makes the same mistake again the next year at the Battle of Brandywine, and yet he keeps his army together, and he suddenly realizes he doesn't have to win. He just can't not completely lose. The British have to win, and they're 3,000 miles away from headquarters, and nobody knows what weather is coming, and it takes 6 weeks to get back, the news to get back to England. It takes even longer because the Gulf Stream's not working in your favor, coming the other way, and so what are you going to do? So it's an amazing story. So New York, 249 years ago, is in British hands. And it stays in British hands through the rest of the war, ends in the fall of 1781 at Yorktown, and another 2 years and 2 months before the Treaty of Paris and the British evacuate. Evacuation day is November 25th, so it's 2 months and 10 days.
That's when the Brits had to take a hike?
8 years when they finally leave, and it just drove Washington crazy. And in fact, everybody's saying, go to Virginia. The French are going, go to Virginia. Let's get them there, which they do. And he's going, no. What about New York? Why don't we take back New York? Because he's the humiliation of having lost this city. And this is the big British stronghold and loyalist stronghold for the war. And people don't remember that our revolution was a civil war, more than our Civil War was. Right. Our Civil War was a sectional war, one part of the country against the other. But this is a civil war in which people in your own town, in your own family, might be loyalists, and you might be a patriot, or you might be disaffected. Please leave me alone. I just want to keep my head down and not be bothered by it. So there's a constant set of interesting struggles that we don't tend to do with. I think we don't want to accept the violence of the revolution because we think it might diminish those big ideas we've been talking about.
Right.
They're not in any way diminished. They're made even more inspirational and more impressive.
Right. It's better when you look at
because of how incredibly violent and bloody this revolution was.
Well, people were willing to die for something,